Happy birthday, Mr. President. Happy birthday to you.
Theo Caldwell on In-Depth Radio, News Talk 1010.
A number of you might think you know who that is. And of course, you probably imagine that's Marilyn Monroe serenading John F. Kennedy. It's actually my wife every morning. It was in the prenup. Every single morning, this is what I wake up to, just soothingly. So I just open my eyes to this. This is Theo Caldwell, ably assisted by Patrick O'Neill and Marilyn Monroe and Whitney Caldwell. And tonight's theme is birthdays, okay? For lots of excellent reasons. News-related. We'll get to that, of course, as we do in the by and by. But birthdays is the theme of tonight's broadcast. Now, I just thought of this as I was sitting in the chair. I will welcome, gentle listener, texts and possibly calls on the topic of birthdays to give you some guidance here, because I don't want to make it too broad, but I don't want to make it too narrow, just right in that sweet spot. Excellent birthday presents, horrible birthday presents. Excellent birthday surprises or outings, birthday disasters. Anything along that line, in that vein, if you will. Text me at 71010 or call me at 416-872-1010 if it's really good. Texts are better, 71010. But as if you're listening live. If you're listening to the podcast, of course, just enjoy and you're welcome. Anyway, birthdays are the theme of tonight's broadcast. We will get to the news-related hook in the by and by. But let's get right to the meat of this past week. I got to deal with something right now. I want this to be the last thing I say about this guy, okay? This will be 3 episodes in a row I've had to deal with this. I feel like Martin Luther nailing my complaints to the door of the church. That is to say, I have a problem with the Pope again. And I don't want to make this a whole, this is not supposed to be an on-air reformation that I'm doing here, but I got a problem with the Pope. Let's go right back to where we left off. Sunday of last week, Pope Francis, for whom I had high hopes. He's the first pope to take the name Francis, patron saint of animals. I love animals. As you very well know, gentle listener, I love animals much more than I love people. And he started, when he began as pope, to say good things like, why does the Vatican have a bank? Stuff like that. He questioned these things that I as a non-Catholic, question. But last Sunday, the Pope, and already he and I were at loggerheads. He knows it. He knows it. He knows what he did. We've already had our disagreements, Pope Francis and I, okay? But he stepped on what is a third rail for me. He went to Cuba. Okay, that's okay. Pope John Paul II met with Fidel Castro. He dealt with Cuba. I understand that. But here's what he did. He went to Cuba this past Sunday, and he did not meet with a single Cuban dissident. Not one person who differs with the Castro regime was granted an audience with this Pope. You think John Paul II would have done that? Absolutely not. John Paul II understood communism, which is still practiced in Castro's Cuba and the People's Republic of China. He understood it for the evil that it is, and so he met with and encouraged the people who were fighting against it. But here goes Pope Francis to Cuba this past weekend, cuddles up with the Castro brothers, doesn't meet with a single dissident. Now you watched the news, yeah? You saw on the Canadian and the American coverage of this big mass that Pope Francis held in Havana, Cuba. But what you might not have heard is not a single dissident not only was not allowed to meet with the Pope, not one was allowed to attend the mass. They were barred from the mass the way Cuban natives are banned from the nice hotels on that island. All right? So I got a problem with that, because Cuba for me, gentle listener, Cuba for me is an issue. It's a brutal dictatorship still. I don't want to hear one word from liberals, big L and small l, about what a halcyon, wonderful, subsistence-level agrarian community it is. You know something? I've never heard anybody who has to live with that kind of archaic agrarian society who wants to live there. I'll believe that Castro's Cuba is a paradise when I see people building rafts out of trash to get into Cuba, okay? And Pope Francis ought to know better, but he doesn't, right? With his Peronist, Argentinian, communist notions, he thinks that the Castros are just misunderstood. Doesn't matter they've been torturing people since like the late 50s, right? Doesn't matter. So, after going to Cuba, holding a mass from which dissidents were barred, not meeting with a single Cuban dissident, Pope Francis then goes to the United States. All right. He's in the U.S. at a time when Christians around the world are being massively oppressed and killed. He's in a country, the United States, where abortionists are harvesting and selling babies' organs. And what does Pope Francis decide to prioritize in his speech? You guessed it, climate change. Climate change. Now, he made a few vague nods to protecting life at various stages of, and this and that. But climate change and the evils of capitalism, that's what he decided to lecture the United States on. So again, I want this to be the last time I talk about the Pope. Because he and I aren't speaking anymore. We are not speaking. You can call him if you want, Your Holiness, but I'm pretty sure you won't get past Patrick O'Neill screening the calls, 416-872-1010. Or text me, Your Holiness, at 71010. I'll know it's you. But this is not cool, man. As Spiderman tells us, and Stan Lee is responsible for a lot of the aphorisms, the great wisdoms of our time. With great power comes great responsibility, okay? And the Pope is the head of the largest Christian denomination in the world. He is supposed to be the representative of Christ on earth. And when you see unalloyed evil, like the communism of Castro's Cuba, or the harvesting of organs by abortionists in the United States for sale, and you can't do anything besides, shake hands and cuddle up with the Castros and make a vague reference to protecting life while you lecture us about climate change, you are squandering the great power you've been given as the Bishop of Rome. Your Holiness, lines are open, sir. All right, let's move on. I don't want to talk about this guy anymore. Sunday. Oh, my God. Okay, no. Too far. So you know what I'm saying. For centuries now, pretty much since the first Pope, people have wondered aloud if this Pope or that Pope or that Pope or the next Pope is the Antichrist, as foretold in the Bible, in the books of Daniel and Revelation. I think it's too far. I think it's almost like a Hitler reference. As soon as you compare someone to the Antichrist, you've gone too far. I think if and when there is an actual human Antichrist who shows up, I think he'll be much more subtle. For example, cross Barack Obama off your list. He's a horrible person and a dreadful president, but please, I think the real Antichrist would be a lot craftier than someone that you could figure out this quick. And I don't like this Pope. I don't care for what he's doing. I think he's missing opportunities left and right, but I wouldn't go as far as to call him, whatever. Anyway, again, defend yourself, sir. Here I am. Let's move on. Enough. Sunday, TIFF ended. The Toronto International Film Festival ended. Good riddance, it says here. Oh my God, am I sick of that thing. So that's over. Sunday also. This is also a dark one. It gets dark, you'll see. Sunday, Saudi Arabia was once again elected to chair the United Nations Commission on Human Rights. Now that same week, this past week, they announced plans in Saudi Arabia to behead and crucify a 21-year-old activist. Okay, so let me get that straight. Saudi Arabia, again, elected to chair the UN Council on Human Rights. The same week, they decided to behead and crucify a 21-year-old activist. Okay? So, I mentioned climate change a minute ago. And in recent broadcasts, I've talked a lot about climate change. And people have thrown the UN back in my face. Oh, the UN believes in climate change. Well, when I and people of my sort of ideological bent scoff at the United Nations, this is the kind of thing we mean. They have a council on human rights, and the country chairing it is beheading and crucifying people for saying the wrong things. Okay? So by the way, and we'll get to this other thing in a second, if you haven't spent all your goodwill on your hashtags and your moral outrage for the kid who made the clock, the so-called clock in the United States and got invited to the White House, how about spare a few minutes for this 21-year-old beheaded and crucified in Saudi Arabia? If you're really concerned about people who are being oppressed, how about put down the clock kid for a second and worry about the 21-year-old who's being beheaded and crucified for saying the wrong thing in Saudi Arabia, the chair of the United Nations Human Rights Council, okay? So when I say the UN can go pound sand, when I say the UN and everybody who cites them as a moral authority can all take one in their hats, this is the kind of thing I'm thinking of, all right? I don't know if I want to make this transition or not. But speaking of, well, I'm not going to put it that way. Here's a violation of a much lesser kind. The Emmys. The Emmys were held this past Tuesday. Now, Game of Thrones won 12 Emmys last week. That's good. I like the Game of Thrones. Patrick O'Neill enjoys Game of Thrones. We've done entire shows about Game of Thrones. It broke the previous record of 9 Emmys for one show. Here are a few problems I got. Peter Dinklage from Game of Thrones. He plays the little person, whatever you say. He plays Tyrion Lannister on Game of Thrones. He won. But he won for Best Supporting Actor on Game of Thrones. I don't like that. That's gaming the system. Don't tell me Peter Dinklage is a supporting actor on Game of Thrones. The guy's had top billing ever since season 2 after they killed Sean Bean. And sorry if it's a spoiler alert, but you had enough time. So he's not a supporting actor. You know what it reminds me of? Catherine Zeta-Jones. They gave her Best Supporting Actress for Chicago. She's the star of Chicago. But they do that. They would really want to win. They take someone who's clearly the lead in a project, call them a supporting actor, and they get the thing, right?
Yes, if there's multiple famous people, that's all it takes.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. You were looking at me for like 10 minutes like you had something to say, so I want to let you in right there.
I just thought it was a bad year to give Game of Thrones all these awards. It was the worst year yet. Really?
Okay, listen, this is once again, it strikes me that do not give us enough time, man, because I want to get into that with you, but I can't. Let me just finish up with the Emmys. Julia Louis-Dreyfus won Best Actress for Veep. I agree with that. I second that emotion. She's amazing in Veep.
I don't like her or the show.
Okay, listen, this is why we're here. We got the back and forth, the tete-a-tete. Veep won Best Comedy. Amy Schumer won for whatever she does. And she also, do you see this, Patrick? She got $8 to $10 million in advance for her debut book. Do you see that?
Yep, she's pretty big in comedy now.
We plugged her a few weeks ago. Do we get a piece of that money? Because remember we did a whole thing about how funny she is?
Of course.
Oh, honestly, we should get something. All right, I can't believe we're nearly at the first break. Oh yeah. Okay, so let's move to Monday. Monday, the Leafs and the Senators had their first exhibition preseason game. Talk about the clash of the Titans, right? I watched it. I don't care. Watch this space. We'll see how the Leafs do. It's all about the Jays here these days. One more thing, and then we'll go to break. 'Cause it's going to tease. All right, it's going to tease. We're going to talk a little bit about green police, about vehicles, about conveyances of various kinds. Perhaps Volkswagen will get mentioned, a few things. But here's one story to go into it before we go to break. Everyone's been all over the news here in Toronto this past week bragging about bike lanes. Saying, oh, isn't it great the bike lanes now go from Parliament all the way to, I don't know, Mississauga or something on Richmond and on Adelaide. This is a disaster. I just drove along Richmond on a weekend. This is a disaster. How could anyone be pleased about this? Was traffic moving too well on these major arteries that we had to eliminate an entire lane? But I haven't heard anyone say this isn't a good idea. It's a bad idea to put up these cones and have a huge bike lane on the streets that people really, really need to go east-west, right?
I live around here. The traffic is worse.
Yeah, it's worse. It's like, how could it possibly have gotten worse? I thought we were at absolute zero, and they've gone ahead and made it worse. And all I see when I look at the news is everyone congratulating themselves. But this is an award-winning tie-in to what we're going to get to next. We're going to talk about bikes and emissions and all the PC ways of getting around. This is Theo Caldwell.
Go, 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 shorty. It's your birthday. We gon' party like it's your birthday. We gon' sip. It's your birthday, and you know we don't give up, cause that's your birthday.
You're listening to Theo Caldwell on News Talk 1010.
Yeah. See, this was what I used to wake up to. This was on my radio alarm clock before my wife started singing Happy Birthday in that breathy tone. So this, of course, is 50 Cent singing It's Your Birthday. And this is the squeaky clean version. This is the radio safe version. That's why they got all the gaps and on the silences in there. Right, Patrick?
No references to sex, drugs, or violence.
Nothing. You know, it's like watching Casino on AMC. You never heard the word freaking so often except when you're watching Casino on regular cable, right?
Yeah, it's all about baloney and
baloney.
Mother fathers.
Yeah, exactly. So, if you're just joining us, you got a heck of a nerve, right? You know what time this broadcast starts. Theo Caldwell here, ably assisted by Patrick O'Neill, and birthdays. That's the theme of tonight's broadcast. There's always a news hook, which we'll get to in the by and by. I am soliciting from you, gentle listener, birthday anecdotes. Presents you liked, didn't like, surprises, whatever. I don't want to do too much on this, so just text me at 71010. You can call 416-872-1010 if you're listening live. CF if you're listening to the podcast. Now, before the break, I started bellyaching. Well, I bellyached about like 5 different things, from the Pope to the Emmys to bike lanes. But let's take the last part first.
You must have an achy belly.
I do, actually. I feel a bit dyspeptic. I'm dyspeptic and nauseous and bilious. And about a number of things, including these bike lanes that we have in the city of Toronto. But it doesn't matter where you're listening to me. You know what I'm talking about, right? These do-gooders and their hippie bike lanes ruining it when it's hard enough to get around any city, including and especially this one, city of Toronto. Because for years, City Council tried to make it hard to drive, as city councils are wont to do. The aptly named Howard Moscow here in the city of Toronto, trying to make it so that nobody can make a choice as to where they go. It's all public transit and unicycles, and that's it. So we have bike lanes on 2 really important streets, if you don't, not from here, Richmond and Adelaide. And everyone all week's been crowing, isn't it wonderful? We have bike lanes. Yeah, in a place where it's winter, like 9 months of the year. Let's make sure that like at least 2 lanes are closed off completely for the 1 or 2 maniacs who want to ride their bike in the snow, right?
I know cyclists who live around here. They don't even like it.
But there you go. Right. Okay. So I promised you a segue, and a segue you shall receive. Let's go to Volkswagen. Speaking of, doing things that are healthy and PC and green, whatever. You know the Volkswagen story. You know what happened this week. Volkswagen admitted to cheating on smog tests. That is, they made it so that their cars would pass smog tests, but then they would go right back to emitting vastly more pollutants than it seemed. That's what Volkswagen did. Now, they're saying that it's going to cost Volkswagen something like $10, $11 billion in stock value. And it has this week in trading, right? It's been atrocious. U.S. markets, yeah. In Canada and the U.S., we've halted hybrid production of Volkswagen. And 2 things. I don't condone lying, all right? Nobody does. This is cheating. This is outright fraud if the allegations are true. That's what Volkswagen did. Doesn't matter if you don't like the smog rules or the pollutant rules. You think they go too far, and I'm sure they do, even though I'm not an expert on that. What they did is fraud. The guy's the head of Volkswagen. His name is Winterkorn. He sounds like a hobbit. Mr. Winterkorn of the Shire has quit as the head of Volkswagen. They got the guy from Porsche to come over to head Volkswagen. I don't know. But I remember 2 things. One, remember the Green Police? Volkswagen had an ad for the Super Bowl like 5 years ago, the Green Police, and it was making fun of all this environmental stuff. Does anyone mention that? Because I haven't heard it mentioned. You know what I'm talking about, Patrick?
I have a vague memory of it.
It showed people driving around in their car, and then all kinds of like do-good environmentalists chasing you around, texting the smog. Anyway, it was a Super Bowl commercial. So it was a big deal like 5 years ago. And it's just funny that the company that had the Green Police ad, sure enough, are the ones who were cheating on the smog stuff, right? It's a, what?
No, nothing.
All right. It's a big news story. I don't like what they did. But it just seems to me that Volkswagen has had a condescension for smog and pollutant tests, but it seems like they're also kind of liars about it. All right. But speaking of bike lanes and green police and the environment, Justin Trudeau. All right. We're going to want, let's skip 2A. We're going to do 2B. Justin Trudeau, he gave a particularly bad interview on, was it Monday? It was Monday of this week. It was in Atlantic Canada on one of our affiliates on CTV in Halifax. And I'm not going to play him. I'll just give you the praise because you won't even understand anyway. I watched the entire Justin Trudeau interview, and there's a lot of debate about whether the media is hiding this really bad Justin Trudeau interview because they're protecting Justin, or if it's just because it was a local CTV and they don't do it. Here's the thing, though, that I noticed. Everyone else was complaining, Justin Trudeau won't say whether there's a budget or a deficit, or if he ever said before he'd run a deficit or whatever. And now I've said for a long time, Justin Trudeau is completely confused. He's like a child in an adult's body. And I think, it's amazing to me that he's tied for the lead in the polls to be prime minister. I think he'll eventually be prime minister. But what really bugged me is this. At the beginning of the interview, this is why I can't be a liberal or on board with one of the many reasons on board with Justin Trudeau. He was asked what's his animating philosophy, like what's important to him about government, about society, about the way we live. And I listened to it. It was all kinds of namby-pamby stuff, making people feel good and looking after people and everything. But you know what wasn't in there? And I know this isn't Canadian. It's more of an American move. But you know what wasn't in there? Not one blessed word about freedom, about liberty. Now, I know in the United States, it's life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And we're told up here in Canada, it's peace, order, and good government, right? But freedom is important. Freedom is more important than peace. Freedom is more important than good government. It's more important than socialized medicine. So the fact that, besides all the other problems I got with Justin Trudeau, the fact that when he's asked, what's your animating philosophy? The word freedom and the word liberty, they don't exist in his vocabulary, and they never come up. And it put me in mind of an interview I did, sort of a speech I gave, in fact. I'd almost forgotten. This is 2B. You got that queued up? I'd almost forgotten this. I was asked, what's the most important thing to me about society and about government and about life? And this is what I said. Go ahead, play it.
What will you do without freedom? Will you fight? Fight against that? No! We will run, and we will live. Aye. Fight and you may die. Run, and you'll live. At least a while. And dying in your beds many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days, from this day to that, for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!
Yeah, I can't remember where that was. I think that was at a Legion Hall or a Shriners speech I gave that. And the music happened organically, by the way. I didn't plan it. I'm sure you recognize my accent instantly. But again, freedom is the most important thing. And we don't talk about that enough in this country. Not even Stephen Harper, who's supposed to be the most limited government guy in this election, doesn't talk about it. So while I'm not a fan of Justin Trudeau, the fact that he couldn't even choke out the word freedom once when asked what's important. You know, we fought a couple of world wars in the last century to preserve our freedom. That should be front and center. Front of mind, top of mind for people who would lead this great country. That's my view, for what it's worth. All right, we got to take a break in a second. When we come back, a short update on the U.S. presidential race. We had a fire here at the building. We did. You know about that, right, Patrick? You know, please, Patrick, you know about it. We're going to discuss it. And then I want to say a bit more about this kid with the fake clock in the United States, because that came up. Anyway, this is an award-winning broadcast. This is Theo Caldwell. We'll be right back.
This is Theo Caldwell on In-Depth Radio, News Talk 1010.
To be clear, this is Theo Caldwell speaking. That's Katy Perry singing. You'd be stunned the number of times our voices get confused. This is the birthday. I don't know what's called birthday. I don't know. It's a Katy Perry song, right? About birthdays. And tonight's theme is birthdays for reasons that we have yet to reveal. But I'm getting all kinds of texts about Braveheart. I don't know what Braveheart is. Apparently it's a film of some kind. And about Trudeau. But I haven't gotten really what I want, which is something good about birthdays. But you can text me if you're listening live at 71010, something birthday related. But you know what? I didn't really care for this idea, but 71010, or call me. Don't call me about this. Call me about other things if you want. 416-872-1010. Patrick, what's on your mind?
Braveheart's a story about how this short little Australian racist freed the country of Scotland.
Oh, okay. All right. I thought that was Shine. No, that wasn't Shine? With Jeffrey
maybe
Rush?
I'm confused
now.
now.
Was that Shakespeare in Love? I don't know. Whatever. Okay. Here's a whole bunch of stuff is happening. Where to start? People are getting upset. Someone, okay, I got to do one side thing. I have so many texts here about Castro and Trudeau and the rest. I can't deal with all those. I will stay late and text you back. But here's a side thing. Every episode, when I get from live listeners, I get lots of regular texts, lots of people that I know, which is great. And then I always get someone, I think all the hosts do, I think we talked about it, all the hosts on this station get someone who doesn't know them, doesn't know the station, right? And they text in and they say something, whatever, out there. I've had at least a couple of people this episode who've been texting me, and they've texted me like essays to say how much they can't stand me and they don't like me and whatever. And I wrote a column, or said in a column many years ago, that angry is the new racist. So when you can't call someone a racist, which is, you and I, Patrick, know, like you can't order a cheese sandwich without somebody calling you a racist, right? If someone from the left calling you racist. But I have these people calling me angry. Rage, say I have rage in me. I have rage, okay. Which I do, by the way, when I talk about Castro's Cuba and wasted opportunities to stick up for people and abortionists selling babies' bodies. Yeah, I do get angry about that. But so I engage as I try to, and I wrote back, rage against the dying of the light. And of course, this genius, right, who knows what's wrong with everything, goes, what light? What are you talking about? Like, this is a pretty famous poem, right? Dylan Thomas. Like, if you're going to talk about rage and make it like your thing, you'd kind of know that. But again, I forget why I don't argue with people on the left. I have to spend so much of my time explaining their positions to them. So I give them even something basic, and I have to explain it. And then I waste airtime with it, right? So I'm angry, but at least I've read something resembling something. I know what I'm talking about at least. But again, every host goes through this. That's fine. But I'm getting some very good birthday stuff. Guy here says his best birthday. His wife surprised him with a pub crawl on his 40th in San Juan, Puerto Rico. Complete surprise. Mucho good time. I think a pub crawl in San Juan, Puerto Rico would be. We should do that after this broadcast.
It sounds Hunter Thompson-esque.
It sounds very us. Hunter Thompson or Theo and Patrick-esque, right? Could be. You can put esque after anything, make it sound suitable. All right, let's move on. Okay, we've chewed up too much time with this. I said I'd talk a little bit about the U.S. presidential race, and I really just will keep it a little bit to say this. This was a shocker to me and to everybody. Scott Walker dropped out of the race on Monday. Now, Scott Walker, I said if I had to bet of the three Republicans I've said who have a chance before Donald Trump, I thought Scott Walker was going to do really well. He was leading in April. He was in second in August, but the governor of Wisconsin, out.
I had the least confidence in him.
You know something? It's so weird when guys who are great governors, who seems like strong, something happens on that big stage. Guys get either bigger, like Donald Trump's gotten bigger, or they shrink. Like Scott Walker shrank. He couldn't raise any money. He was invisible in the debates, and even when he did speak, it was really canned and awful.
It was so unpresidential.
Yeah, it was really weird. You know who else is having trouble breaking through is friend of mine, friend of this program, Jeb Bush. Jeb is like 6'9". He's a huge guy. He's a very successful former governor. But ironically enough, he's even shrinking.
Donald Trump makes him look like a little boy.
It's so strange. This race is weird. Anyway, the big news was Scott Walker dropped out. And on the way out, he took a swipe at Donald Trump, Scott Walker did, saying he hopes that other people will drop out so that the field can come together against Donald Trump. Watch this space. Tuesday, as I said, Patrick, we had a fire right here at the building, okay? At 3:30 in the morning. It was this is not a joke. Happened in the cafeteria here. And they say it might have been you, like Ryan from The Office with the Pop-Tart.
I walked over there to look for the vending machines the other day, and I wondered why they were remodeling the entire cafeteria area.
Yeah, well, that's because somebody, not mentioning any names, Amanda Capito, I'm not suggesting it was anyone in particular, Mike Bullard, might have put some metal in the science oven or something, but we had a fire here. So I saw it on the news reporting on ourselves, our own building burning down. It didn't burn down, but that happened on Tuesday. All right? All right, now Tuesday. One more thing on Tuesday. And this I mentioned earlier. The clock kid. The kid, Ahmed, what's his name? Ahmed Muhammad, what's his name? Ahmed, doesn't matter. The kid in the United States, Muslim kid. And you've seen this all over your Facebook feed, all over the news. And I left it alone last episode because I didn't want to talk about this stupid story. This kid, they say, built a clock and brought it to school, and because everyone is such an Islamophobe and such a racist, they thought it was a bomb, and so Barack Obama is inviting him to the White House. Mark Zuckerberg is inviting him to intern at Facebook. He's invited to, Google for a tour of the campus, and on Tuesday, his parents pulled him out of school. This is a complete scam. This kid did not make a clock. He disassembled a digital clock from the 1980s. It looked a hell of a lot more like a bomb than the Pop-Tart looked like a gun. The kid who got suspended for biting his Pop-Tart into the shape of a gun. And do you remember him?
No, but I did that all the time, actually.
Yeah, but you didn't get arrested for it. So to those people who've said on Facebook and on the news that this wouldn't happen to a white kid or a non-Muslim kid, you're nuts.
Are you insane?
It happens all the time. It just fits your narrative.
I would get suspended a ton for just doing the finger gun thing.
Exactly, and it does happen to kids. They get suspended and arrested for just drawing a gun. It happens all the time, especially in America. But we just had it. We just had it here in Regina, the unfortunately named Regina, Saskatchewan. A kid was criminally charged for talking about bringing a gun to school. Where's his trip to the White House? Where's his Facebook internship? Where's his Google tour? Nowhere. You know why? Because it doesn't fit the narrative of calling everybody an Islamophobe and a bigot. Did you see the picture of this kid's so-called clock?
Yeah, again, and I also have seen pictures of bombs, and people not knowing, you could definitely confuse it with a bomb. Like TVs and movies have really done that to us.
Yeah, it has. Okay, I'm going to move on. I didn't want to talk about that story, but my God, the moral preening for this kid. And his dad is an agitator who's constantly trying to get people to do things that he can accuse them of Islamophobia. Apparently, he goes back to Sudan every few years and runs for president. Like the guy, he comes from a troublemaking family who are always trying to create situations like this, and it just makes me crazy. By the way, the angry people have been texting me. Dylan Thomas, I don't know who he is. Oh my God. Like, don't even. What are you texting? Like, opining in the public square if you don't know anything, right? There are plenty of stations to go do that. Okay, Tuesday. Speaking of, the Muppets. The Muppets came back to ABC on Tuesday night. Now, you and I, Patrick, talked about it months ago when they announced they were going to do the Muppets again. I was against it. And you know something? I was right to be against it. It was awful. The new Muppets is a hate crime. The voices are all wrong. We knew that was going to happen. My youngest and I watched it. We got to about 3 minutes in, 8:03 we got to. And she said, isn't this a kid's show? Because there were like 5 sex jokes in the first 3 minutes. All right?
Really?
Yes. And again, and the voices, you and I,
That's
just
uncomfortable.
inhaling helium, Patrick, could do the Muppet voices better. But it's not even that. It's not even the fact that there's all kinds of double entendres. They couldn't just do the Muppet Show, where they do skits and have a guest host and everything, right? They can't do that because everyone's so cool now. It's like a mockumentary behind the scenes. It's not, so they're not really trying kind of thing. It's so bad. It's extremely upsetting. Did you watch any of it?
No, I actually happened to miss the Muppets premiere.
Yeah, they say it got decent ratings because I think it was people like me, people of my generation and our kids tuning in to try to watch. But I wouldn't be surprised if after like the third minute, like us, people bailed. And I watched a bit. One interesting thing though, it's sort of supposed to take place behind the scenes of Miss Piggy's talk show. And when Miss Piggy answers the phone, you know what she says? Go for Piggy. I like that. So obviously the creators of the new Muppets, misguided and misbegotten though they may be in various ways, listened to this program and got the idea.
I'm sick of people stealing our ideas.
Oh, I know, seriously. And seriously, Amy Schumer, we really do expect a check. I know we sound like we're joking around, but we're quite serious. We'd like our cut. One last thing. We're going to do Public Schools Watch after the break because we got to take a break in a second. One more thing in my childhood is disappearing. Max Milk, the Max stores, which they took over a lot of what used to be Becker's. Anyway, Max used to be a cat. You know, and now it became an owl. They've announced it's going to be replaced by Circle K in 2017.
I don't know what that is.
Oh, people know, man. People know. Max Milk, it's a convenience store. It was a cat with like a Macintosh hat on. Then now the thing's an owl. Now Max Milk's going to be Circle K. You know, strange things are afoot at the Circle K. Anyway, people who know what I'm talking about are as devastated as I am.
Oh, I know what Max Milk is, but what's a Circle K?
Okay. Circle K is a convenience store in the United States. It figured prominently, product placement in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, Circle K. So it's the owner. It's the owner of Max Milk. They're getting rid of the entire brand. Not going back to the cat with the Scottish hat, getting rid of the owl, and it's all going to be Circle K's in 2017. I'm devastated. I'm gutted. And I want Becker's back, too, while we're at it. All right, we're going to get to the public schools after the break. This is Theo Caldwell.
More from Theo Caldwell on News Talk 1010.
That's true. This, of course, is the Beatles' birthday. I do. Now, you know, I'll tell you right now. Tonight's theme is birthdays, and this isn't the news hook, but it actually was my birthday this week. And I got a trivia question for this last segment. It was my birthday this week. Tonight's theme is birthdays. That's not the reason, though. We got a better reason than that. I am going to discover, it's a literary quiz. I am going to discover this year if Douglas Adams is correct and if my age is the answer to life, the universe, and everything. So, according to Douglas Adams, the age I just turned is the answer to life, the universe, and everything. Now, without Googling, can you tell me how old I turned? Text me because I don't want it to be public knowledge. Text me at 71010 if you are listening live. But it was my birthday this week on Thursday. My eldest made me the greatest cake in the history of great cakes using a cookbook from 1960 where they want you sifting flour and using ice water and getting all fancy, Dan. Let me tell you something. Whatever she did, it was worth it. I want a birthday every day now. So that happened. And I am still soliciting texts, just texts. I don't have time to talk. Text at 71010 about, I don't know, things birthday. But we'll get to the real news hook as to why birthday is the theme of tonight's broadcast. But first, as I promised before the break, it's time for the Public Schools Watch, which is rapidly becoming a segment on this broadcast as I navigate the fickle waters. Does that work? I'll use it as a rough draft. The fickle waters, I don't know. Fickle? Can you, Patrick, get me an online thesaurus, something better than fickle waters. I navigate the treacherous, crocodile-infested waters of being a public school parent, which I am for the first time. Oh, my God. I got like 1 million people texting in the correct age. Oh, my God. Everyone. Oshawa, Toronto. All of you have my age correct, except for, is it Oakville? No, Toronto. I'm not 36. I barely remember being 36. Okay. Text me at 710. Okay, most of you got it right. All over the GTA, everyone now knows exactly how old I am. Hamilton, you're right. Toronto, you're right. Okay, Public Schools Watch. So our kids are in public school. I've never been a public school parent before, but I'm keeping a gimlet eye on the silly bears that goes on. I got a couple of items this week. Number 1, schoolyard segregation. Now, our youngest goes to my alma mater, junior public school, okay? And the schoolyard has been very much the same since, the 1960s. And They've decided to segregate the schoolyard. In this day and age.
It's about time.
Patrick, don't get yourself suspended, buddy. They have decided to segregate it. Let me just clarify in terms of age. So only grade 1 through 3 are allowed in this part of the schoolyard.
My school was like that.
It's the stupidest thing I ever heard. Okay? Look, we have kids have been playing in that schoolyard, including me as a kid, for like centuries now. Centuries, since Columbus. In that same schoolyard. And everything was fine. So my kid, she's frustrated. She's like, I want to, but they're segregating it now. Like they're separating the Crips and the Bloods. Now, interage play is important. But as I told our youngest, and I've told you, gentle listener, this is what happens when you get bureaucrats in a room. They think they have to make up rules and do something. And so what they've done is they decided to segregate, and they walk around to segregate, make sure if you're in this grade, you're here, in this grade, you're there. Stupid. It's stupid. What?
It's funny because usually kids are self-segregating in that aspect. You don't want to play with younger kids because you're a loser, and so the older kids don't want to play with you.
Let the kids work it out.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. It usually happens on its own.
You get bureaucrats that can't. They cannot conceive of the idea of letting people make their own decisions at any age. So the same people who segregate schoolyards are the same ones who think that the bike lanes are a good idea on Richmond and Adelaide. Like they can't just leave us alone. And by the way, Oakville and Toronto and a number of you can go to hell. I'm not 50 and I'm not 48. These answers I'm getting on this is absurd. This is another hate crime right here, calling me 50. Toronto, your birthday's next week. Happy birthday. But my God, get it together. And Oakville, 48, am I right? Come on now. I mean, we have cameras. Take a look. Watch me online. Tell me if I look 40. I know I'm wearing a suit today, but whatever. Okay, here's the second Public Schools Watch issue. Affirmative action object lesson. Affirmative action. Okay, again, it's not racial, so don't jump in, but it is affirmative action in principle. Here's what happened. Now, our youngest, she tried out for both the football and the softball teams at her school, okay? And it's a junior school, so it goes up to grade 6. And there were numerous tryouts, early mornings and after school. Numerous tryouts, not easy, and it took a long time. You know what they did at the end of it? They took only the grade 6 kids. That's it. And maybe like with one exception for a kids. That's it. And the coach of the softball team told me explicitly, we're only taking grade 6s because it's their last chance, so we're just going to take grade 6s. Now, it's defensible that it's the kid's last year in the school, so you let them on the team. That's defensible. But it's okay, I'm not saying I agree. I'm saying it's defensible. But you know what? If you're going to do it that way, and you know that going in, how about let us all know before we're up at the crack of dawn, and I'm spending the weekend buying equipment and teaching her how to throw the football and teaching her how to do softball. How about let us know that unless you're in the 6th grade, you're not getting on the team. So she tried really hard, our youngest. She was really excited about it. And then, of course, she found this out. And I explained to her, I said, listen, honey, this is a way for you to find out. Sometimes, certainly it happens in broadcasting, I'll tell you what. Sometimes, even if you're better than everybody else, you still, for one reason and another that it's out of your control, you are excluded from where you'd like to be. So, you know what? I'm glad that she learns that now, especially in a public sector environment. You want to get that phone, man? It's going bananas, the phones. Anyway, so that happened. One last thing. This is a small thing. The Terry Fox run. We did the Terry Fox run at the kids' school. It was nice. It was a great time. I don't want to say anything bad about it, but it was pared down because of this job action. It's the first time I've been on the business end of these teachers constantly striking and screwing up other people's lives. But this job action, the kids could only run around the schoolyard. They couldn't run in the neighborhood like they used to. It was nice, but whatever. All right. Last few stories to finish out the week. On, I don't know what it was, Wednesday, Thursday, you heard about this. An NDP candidate in the federal election who is also a school trustee, so we're tying in with the public schools deal. Her name's Alex Johnstone. This young lady made a phallic joke about Auschwitz on Facebook in 2008. And then, when called out about it, in response, she admits she didn't know what Auschwitz is until now.
Then how would you know the word, that you would know the
Auschwitz.
word exists?
She was looking at a picture on Facebook and she did whatever. Now, I say to you this, and you've heard this from me before. You can be an idiot on the left. As far as I know, I think she's still a candidate, right? She hasn't withdrawn. I haven't seen the news that she's withdrawn. You can be a complete idiot on the left. Make that kind of a remark and be a schools trustee, yet not even know what Auschwitz is. But if you're a conservative candidate, if you pee in a coffee cup, or you pretend to be disabled in a phone call, you're out. One more thing. We just found out about a liberal federal candidate in British Columbia who was a 9/11 truther, who said that the 9/11 was an inside job as late 2 years ago, and asked about it. She goes, that was my truth 2 years ago. That was my truth. Honestly, that's the mating call of an idiot. That was my truth. You've heard that from people, right?
Yeah, it's this new thing where certain people, because of the way they are, they get to have their own perspective on life, and that's
ridiculous.
That gets to be the truth now.
I got like a handful of stories, but I got to tell you something. Before we get off public schools, Stanley, go for Theo.
Yeah, I like to say why are we now getting involved with the school system and we're worried about segregation in the playground when the school system has been broken for the last 10 to 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now that you're a parent, you see the problems of the school system. We got more issues to talk about than segregating kids in the playground. That's the least of my worries right now.
Oh, it's true. And I have done. I've talked about the fact that they prioritize stuff like recycling and climate change and gender confusion instead of teaching the kids, math and English. I've been bellyaching about this, Stan, for years and years and years. What's different now is I'm seeing it firsthand as a parent in the public school system. But I don't know you well, but I sense that you and I are on the same page. We got a bushel full of problems with the public school system, and on this broadcast, we deal with them one at a time.
Absolutely. I was at a school curriculum night a couple nights ago in my area in Markham, and we disagreed on a lot of issues. But with the teachers, there's one thing we agreed on is the system sucks, and this is coming from the teachers.
Yeah. Yeah, just so. All right, well, listen, step at a time, Stanley. Thanks for the call, bud. As Kevin Gaudette, my old buddy Kevin Gaudette, if he even remembers me, he says, don't leave it up to the schools to teach your kids. It's so true. I got to fix it when they get home because I don't know what they're getting taught, but I got to fix it. Don't leave it up to the schools. All right, let me fly through a few stories and give you the reason for the birthday theme. Hillary Clinton on Tuesday came out and opposes the Keystone XL pipeline, the most studied pipeline in the history of flowing liquid that her own State Department approved. Now she's against it. Yogi Berra died at age 90 on Wednesday. Guy won 10 World Series with the Yankees, one of the great baseball figures of all time. Here's the reason for the hook. Wednesday, a judge ruled that Happy Birthday is now public domain. You ever been to like a Dave & Buster's or a Chuck E. Cheese or a Boston Pizza and they sing Happy Birthday, it's someone's birthday and they don't sing Happy Birthday? Or in a movie or TV show, they sing He's a Jolly Good Fellow or something stupid instead of what we all in real life sing? It's because Warner Brothers for like 100 years said they had the right to Happy Birthday. According to a judge, as of Wednesday, that's it. It's now open season. Sing happy birthday. Enjoy yourself. Just in time for the birthdays of Sue Ann Levy and Bill Murray. My buddy Sue Ann Levy from the Toronto Sun. And Bill Murray, who I'd like to be friends with, which is on Wednesday. My birthday, which was on Thursday.
I missed it by that much.
No.
September 5th.
A couple more very quick things. Lawn signs were set on fire. We'll get to this next episode, but what's the point of lawn signs in an election? Has it ever changed a single vote?
It's to set them on fire.
All right. The Sun newspapers announced they no longer have online comments. That's a huge error. As Kathy Shadle says, read news articles from the bottom up. Comments are crucial. Reports of a new supermoon. Every week there's a new supermoon. I don't know. Some kind of new iPhone. Everyone's losing their mind. Boehner stepped down as Speaker of the House in the United States. Finally, last thing, we got to go. But you know what they say, only the good die young? That is true of Doug Ellis, whose passing we observed today. Great man. Go with God. Via con Dios. God bless you, Doug. Folks, this has been an excellent broadcast. You truly enjoyed it. This is Theo Caldwell. Good night.